Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome to another episode of Cal's Corner Radio here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Folks, as I say every week in every episode, on this show we cover everything from politics to the paranormal. This episode will be no different. We're going to start with the subject of UFOs, give you a quick recent update regarding a subject which has been in the news lately. We'll come back to that in a moment. Then the rest of the show will be dedicated to the U.S. presidential race that is upcoming. And the final announcement today, finally, as in it's long overdue, since there were all kinds of hints that Joe Biden has now jumped into the race, how he impacts things, etc. Now, let's go back to the first subject, UFOs. As I mentioned, we cover everything from politics to the paranormal. That's a wide variety of subjects. Although I don't consider UFOs to be paranormal, I think unidentified flying objects are quite normal. If something's flying, you can't identify it. It's a UFO by the very definition of it. In today's society, however, things have changed. The term UFO has become, thanks to popular culture, due in no small part to popular movies, from Hollywood, bestseller books on UFOs, etc., saturation of aliens in our culture, in science fiction and in just across the board, everything from jewelry to fashion. There's even a major line of holsters for your gun called Alienware. They're some of the best in the business. So aliens are everywhere in the United States. And having been outside America for over 18 years, having been to 27 different countries, I can tell you from firsthand observation, although I heard in the U.S. and honestly believed that the fascination with UFOs was just universal and global. Well, unless I was asleep for 2 decades, and I wasn't, I promise you I wasn't, it's not. It really seems to be an obsessive thing with the United States. Canada is involved in it, Canadians to a degree, and then, of course, the British behind the United States, and I think that's a bit predictable. But then it goes way downhill from there. On the other hand, interest in the paranormal, which covers a wide variety of subjects, can be everything from astrology to fortune-telling to whatever you think is paranormal. People do put UFOs and aliens in the category of the paranormal, which to me is kind of bizarre. If anything, if other life is found out outside our planet should be considered normal and special, but normal, part of the universe, just like we are. Nothing paranormal about it, but that's what we do today. UFOs are no longer unidentified flying objects, they are flying saucers. Dr. Jalen Hynek, if you believe the nonsense on the History Channel, was this semi-Fox Mulder type investigator whose wife had a lesbian affair. It's just entirely ridiculous. It's just beyond the pale. But yet that's what we're dealing with today. So then, in both fine tradition and keeping with both sensationalistic things that have happened as well as updating a factual story that's worth discussing, that's why we're doing it here, the Navy announces, the United States Navy, from the Secretary of the Navy's office, that they have now upgraded their UFO reporting procedures and that they promise people, the public, that and the media, that they take the cases very seriously. They have said that there have been many reports over the last several years where they have violated even military facilities. They're concerned about it. They encourage people to report them. They'll take them seriously, and here are the guidelines for doing it. Now, what is happening is this has been reported by the news. That's great. But then the UFO conspiracy nuts get a hold of it, or a lot of ufologists, and it goes downhill from there. Suddenly, we hear reports that, oh, this is happening because it's the latest phase in disclosure. No, it's not. Today's society, including the Pentagon, they're a little more malleable and flexible than they used to be. I remember in different times in my life, since I've been into the subject of UFOs for over 40 years, I'm dating myself, I know for a fact that there were times in my life during different decades where I went from being mocked to suddenly being praised to then condemned if I expose certain cases. That's a UFO internal issue as far as people within the field of ufology. They like to hear that everything is genuine, everything is true, which is unfortunate because it blinds them. But that's the way it is. And so now we have the Navy saying, hey, here's what we're doing. We've upgraded the procedure. They've issued official statements. And now people are saying, wow, this is great. The government's going to come clean. No, it doesn't mean that. It simply means they have upgraded their guidelines. And they've done that before. Now, I admit it's been a long time since they last did it, at least publicly, and then made a point to an event to tell the media and public about it. Yes, it has been a long time, but it has been done before. It is not exactly their first rodeo, to use a metaphor. So don't read anything more into this than really exists. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because on Fox TV, on Tucker Carlson, God bless him, he devoted yet another segment to this continuing fallout from the first story that was really blown open here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and on this show and on Rob McConnell's show, where we exposed Harry Reid's basically what seems to be a scandal financially, where he used black money from the Pentagon black budget to fund a so-called UFO research effort, where he gave at least half the money publicly, if not all of it, but certainly most of it, at least half of it, to Robert Bigelow, his longtime friend and donor, because he had convinced Harry Reid once again that Skywalker Ranch was haunted, because Reid had read a letter that Bigelow had brought with him talking about all this incredible paranormal activity going there. And then, of course, these UFO reports. So as we exposed in the article, and the fallout from this is still continuing, it is not over, folks, believe me. And we'll come back to this later as it is logical and right to do it. Not this show, but in subsequent episodes, you see that now the Pentagon has been blitzkrieged by the media, especially in the last year and a half, since the New York Times broke the story about this Harry Reid-funded waste of taxpayer money. And according to the Pentagon and their official description of this project, it's supposed to be a 40-year view into the future and may have money for 40 years buried somewhere by God knows what. Not Harry Reid this time, but according to the former director of that program, Elizondo, if you believe him, he says the money is still continuing through other entities. Who knows? The point is the Pentagon is simply kind of responding, albeit late to the game, to this spike of interest in what have been naval reports and a absolute legitimate increase and spike in reports by pilots of course, connected with the Navy of unidentified flying objects. There's every valid reason to investigate those. So, if anything, let's commend the Navy and praise them for doing this. But let's not think that this is the opening of their kimono to reveal the cosmic Watergate, because as we have discussed before, as I think or hope I proved last century in my book, The Roswell UFO Crash, What They Don't Want You to Know, which, like it or not, remains the best-selling Roswell expose of all time to date. It exposes the false claims in all the top 22 major Roswell books ever written by all the top authors, because I am, for better or for worse, one of the 4 original Roswell researchers. So with my history and pedigree going back way before a lot of these guys jumped on the Roswell bandwagon, it is kind of comical for me to see these people who suddenly grow up with this Roswell lore, embracing it as if it was part of history in the same breath that the U.S. Civil War was. And it is complete nonsense and hooey. And then you have the U.S. government in there playing their games, where they use and misuse and abuse, let's be honest, UFO researchers. They manipulate them, feed them all kinds of bullcrap stories. The conspiracy crowd, because that's what they are, they'll run with it. Things go viral very easily. The government encourages belief in nonsense, and it creates a vicious cycle where people lose trust in the government. It ultimately comes back to haunt the very entities that caused the problem to begin with. So it's really a vicious cycle. And today, record cynicism among the U.S. voter population exists. They don't trust the government anymore. Who can blame them? Majority of Americans want a third viable political party alternative. Most Americans now are engaged in politics than they ever have been since the Vietnam War. Obviously, for that to happen, a lot has had to have happened. And of course it has, ever since the debacle in Iraq and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's been a lot of losing streaks there. We have to remember that Trump is in office now, ultimately as the final testament to the legacy of Barack Obama. If Obama had did the wonderful, fantastic, godlike, Jesus-type job that the liberal la-la media and revisionist historians like to claim he did, well, then Trump wouldn't be in office. Hillary Clinton would be, and she's not, of course, and thank God. That's my personal view. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, what we're going to do is take a break in a little bit, but before we do, we're going to talk the rest of the show about politics. We're going to start with a quick review of what had happened in the last presidential election, because it's directly related to the current situation that's going on now, and especially the final leg in the Democratic side of things, that is with the Democratic Party, where we now know that former Vice President Joe Biden has now formally entered the race. He released an official video saying this. And of course, in a few days, he'll be, visiting swing states like Pennsylvania to try to get them back into the fold, because Trump had won those unexpectedly from taking them away from the Democratic Party. That's because the Democratic Party was not listening to the mood of the voters. And we'll essentially prove that and talk about it when we come back after this commercial break. Now, what we will do in the last part of the segment is we'll wrap it up with kind of a prediction of what I think is going to happen, and I'll share with you my biggest fear of what political combination that I fear that I just can't see myself personally voting for it, but it's a nightmare in my mind, and we'll end the show with that. I'll just share that view with you, and then you can let me know what your feedback is. Okay, we'll be back after this commercial break.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shaman worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions. offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Welcome back to the second segment here on Cal's Corner radio show here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now, switching from the subject of so-called paranormal and UFOs in this case to American politics, let's talk about the recent development that former Vice President Joe Biden has now formally and finally officially put his hat into the ring. He's now running for president. Long overdue. He has indicated for months he would do that. There were all kinds of hints. Now he has finally done it. In fact, Biden always said he would be the last Democrat to declare his candidacy. I think he was wrong by no, he's tied. One other Democrat has jumped in. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but he's not a major candidate anyway. So now we have here for what is 2020, basically 20 so-called top candidates from the Democratic Party running for president. Now, if that seems a little bit familiar, it's kind of a replay of what happened with the Republican Party. And we must remember that in the previous election, which Trump ultimately won, we had about 24 other Republicans running. There were more, but let's take the top 24, the ones who got the most attention. You may remember these debates where the stage was loaded with these different candidates, and then as each subsequent debate happened, the number of them kept being reduced down to the point where Trump basically beat his nearest rival, Senator Ted Cruz, by a 2-1 margin. And then there was the move from within the party to try to deny Trump his victory. Ted Cruz, of course, was involved in that, as was Mitt Romney. It failed. Trump went ahead and became the head of the Republican Party. And now they often just don't say a lot of things that they probably might otherwise if he weren't their leader. They let him get away with a lot of stuff. It does help harm their reputation. But until they open up and try to stop him, they're going to suffer when he makes mistakes, as they should. So what Biden is doing is Biden is trying to position himself in this race as basically not only Super Joe, I guess is a good way to put it. He's going to come in and save America, okay? He is fighting for the soul of America, as these expressions are starting to come out now, these campaign slogans, these pitches. We're fighting for the soul of America because what we have now is not really who we are. And we don't agree, most of us, with what the guy in the White House presently does, what Trump does. And, of course, Trump's critics will point to the Mueller report as the latest example of how bad Trump is. Now, let's talk about that for a brief moment because that is relevant. They are absolutely right that the Mueller report does not make Trump look like a saint. Nobody ever said it would. Therefore, it's kind of dishonest, actually. I think disingenuous. It's a bit of a fraud for these people who are now complaining about, look how bad it makes Trump look. We told you so. Well, if you told us so, why are you so shocked? Okay? If you were warning us this whole time, why were you so shocked? Okay, it doesn't make him look like a saint. You never said he was a saint. You spent 2 years trying to get him out of office. You've accused him of being everything from Hitler to a spy, a Putin's puppet. That was your phrase, quote unquote. This is, again, the la left-wing liberal media. And you have people like the head of CNN, Jeff Zucker, saying, we were just reporting the facts and we did a great job of it. I'm proud of the job we did. Well, if you just reported the facts, then all the bitching and moaning that you did for 2 years would have squared up ahead of time as if you had psychic powers, because you were reporting only the facts the whole time. They would have matched what Robert Mueller said, but they didn't, did they? No. Yeah, you all agreed Trump was not a saint, but nobody said he was, and there's no crime in not being a saint. But as far as colluding with Russia, being a spy, being bright enough to do it and hide it from all over 1,000 intelligence analysts and agencies, common sense stuff. Even I pointed out as a reporter, reporting on this years ago, predicting there would be no collusion. Duh, hello, guess what happened? There wasn't. And then what about the idea of, being involved in the conspiracy to hack the computers and all that? No, again, there was not. So none of that panned out. And then now part of the Democratic Party still doesn't know what it wants to be when it grows up. They're like, well, we want to impeach him. Then you have Pelosi saying, no, we're not going to impeach him, but please continue to investigate. Okay, so they want death by 1,000 cuts. The one thing that people need to understand is what Mueller actually did. He really punted the ball, because there's somewhere between 8 to 12 investigations that will continue to go on at the state level, depending on how many cases they ultimately decide to try, or whether they co-join some of them. And this is where the state prosecutors may very well nail members of Trump's family after the fact for whatever they did that Mueller can't touch. We don't know, because this is whole new territory that has never been done before. So this isn't over. And then, of course, you have Trump threatening to retaliate, to investigate Hillary Clinton and the Steele dossier. The Steele dossier thing and Hillary Clinton's collusion with it absolutely should have been investigated from day one. But the Republicans had 2 years to do it. They didn't bother. And, of course, one of the reasons Trump got elected is because he promised to hold Hillary Clinton accountable. Remember that famous line? He said you would be in jail in the second debate they had. Well, then he says, oh, I don't want to harm her, so I'll just let it go. Well, again, that doesn't win you fans. That's not why people put you in office, whether you agree or disagree with that approach on how to handle Hillary Clinton. My own view is that she and every one of these other crooks should be held accountable. In fact, I think the government should live by the same laws we do. I think they shouldn't have their own special health care. Let them live with Obamacare just like everybody else has to. And if you force them to, I bet you it starts to work just right, because their lives will literally be dependent on it. Anyway, now we've got this election where basically, because Trump's popularity is at an all-time low, it is essentially a referendum on both Trump and, ironically, the soul and direction of the Democratic Party. This isn't only about Trump. People who make that mistake don't get it. Now, the Democrats have to stop arguing among themselves. They have to unite on their various policies, whatever they are, and they need to duke it out to figure out what that alignment should be. And the last thing they can afford, in my view, is a centrist. A centrist is not going to get it done. Obama was pretty much a centrist. Well, gee, the result is Donald Trump in the White House, okay? Wrong. That's not the way to approach it. A centrist will get you 4 more years of essentially delaying the time, where by the time you kick the can down the road and then the next guy's got to deal with it, the problem's even worse. In fact, it may get to the point 4 years down the road, because it was neglected, that now you can't really solve it to the degree that you could have, or really cure it the way you should have. And that's the danger point we're at right now. We have so many problems. I'm talking about the United States, and it goes beyond just the USA, because whether you like it or not, the fate of many nations is tied to how good or bad America does overall as a country, because it is the world's only superpower. You better believe that if Canada suffers economically, it harms America. If America is hurting economically, it harms Canada and Mexico. There's one trade zone there, despite Trump's attempts to mess with it. I agree there's problems with it. It didn't deliver on what Gore and the Clintons promised. But globalism promises rarely deliver, because globalists themselves, in my view, are extremists. That's for another show. Now, getting back to this election, you have the Democratic Party, which at its core isn't unified. It still doesn't know what it wants to be when it grows up. The head of the party, Perez, he's Obama's sock puppet. Okay? So he's not really going to rock the boat too much. So there are the Obama Democrats. It is a large block of voters. But their numbers and relevance this time around is nowhere near what it was 8 years ago when Barack Obama rose up out of nowhere after he was bored being senator for the first 2 years, as he said he was. Now, we have another set of Democrats, the Clintonites, the holdovers, who know Hillary's not going to run again unless a miracle happens, but they still don't want to give it up. They're just going to stink up someone else's party because they're not Hillary. Well, they like to take a dump on the Sanders people, and that's what they've been doing. They love smearing the Sanders people. Why? Because they hate them, and they always have. Sanders had the nerve to run against Queen Hillary. She was supposed to run largely uncontested, but then Bernie jumped in and made it a real run. And Hillary, of course, had to cheat as part of the way that she won. She spent over $200 million essentially buying superdelegate votes, and she still lost. In fact, the total guesstimates for the total amount of money, if you add in all the super PACs and all that were spent to put Hillary in office and it failed, was about $2.2 billion. It was the most expensive losing political election in human history. All right, so you have the Clintonites who will do something, whatever. They're kind of the jokers, literally, in the deck. Then you have Bernie Sanders' crowd. He, until Biden jumped in today, was the leader, or he was tied with Biden. He is either at first place or second place, depending on the state. Iowa's coming up. He could win it. Biden could win it. But Biden is expected to lose in New Hampshire, which is after that. And, of course, Sanders is expected to win that like he did before. Now you have another group of Democrats. Let's call them the independents. These people don't really know what to think. In fact, some of them may vote for Trump, believe it or not, if they're not happy with whoever is on the Democratic side. And you'd be surprised who does that. In the last election that put Trump in the office, even though Hillary won the popular vote, about 18%, I believe, no, about 12% of Bernie Sanders supporters voted for Trump. It's not that they wanted Trump, they just didn't want Hillary. So there's that factor there. Then there's the female vote. You got to be careful there because it's very polarizing among many voters for different reasons. Now, we'll come back after the commercial break to talk about that.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by L.A. Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God, And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Welcome back to the third segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now we're talking about women and the female vote. The majority of the population of the United States is female. If most of the women bother voting in the upcoming election, women will be the majority determinant factor as far as their influence in the vote tally for the next president of the United States. Now, Trump, kind of obvious, doesn't have the support of most women. What he did have in the previous election was the support of most women in New York City. That was kind of comical because that was Hillary Clinton's own stomping grounds, even though she did take the state over Trump. Well, this time it's going to be different. Now, in the Democrats, you can see that what they're doing is already pandering to the women's vote. And that's a huge mistake because most Americans, unless I missed some polling data, don't really support the Me Too movement the way the Me Too movement supports the Me Too movement. And thank God, because one is sane, the other is insane. Now, I want to share with you one quick little fact. We, I think, talked about this maybe a year ago on the show here. When the first Me Too march was going on, these feminists, as they like to call themselves today, although they don't really understand the word, if you are old school like me and you remember the days of Gloria Steinem, you kind of have to laugh at the modern equivalents or what they think are modern equivalents. Well, those are the ones who may know who Steinem is. Most of them don't. Anyway, make a long story short, what they didn't know is that this March for Women to supposedly protest Trump's wandering hands and, of course, mistreatment of women in our culture and underpaying them and so on, those are good causes, by the way, as far as fighting that kind of behavior. You should treat women with respect as fellow human beings. You should never have consideration for what sex they are, skin color, or anything, because that's just genetics. So what they didn't know is that Linda Sarsour was one of the co-founders of this women's rights march. And this is the same Linda Sarsour, who's a Palestinian radical who wears a hijab because she thinks she has to cover herself or whatever. And she doesn't support women's rights at all. In fact, she supports Sharia law. She does not support Israel's right to exist. She has relatives who have been in jail for being terrorists. She supports Hamas, which is a terrorist group. And yet she's going to be the poster child and the spokeswoman for women's rights, even though she wants to replace the Constitution of the United States with Islamic Sharia law. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. In fact, if Hollywood were to try to make a movie like this, you would think this is a really sick comedy. But it wasn't. It was reality, and this is what happened. And, of course, none of this was really talked about by CNN. Instead, this woman was praised. Everyone bent over backwards as a shining example of what a humanitarian who values human life and equal rights and peace and love and joy for all. Nothing even close to the truth, folks. Please bother to Google it. Again, you've heard her name before. You've seen her face before. Please do your homework on this because you're not going to find out the truth from places like CNN about this. And you can Google that as well. All right, so you have that faction going on now, all right? Then you have another group within that, let's call them millennials. Now, these are the groups that, about 18 to 22% of them, according to their own survey results, aren't sure the Earth is round, yet they use Google Earth. So that's quite an amazing mental prowess skill to have, I guess is a good way to put it. They just think that socialism is just wonderful, that everything should be free. They don't understand what socialism really is, but they love using the word. And now to try to fool people and try to worm their way out of how to explain what socialism really is and being held accountable by little things called historical facts, they like to say, oh, social democrats, social democracy. Once again, folks, don't fall for the stupid wordsmithing that these guys do, because this is, again, endemic, especially in the Democratic Party. If you look at the political campaign for president that Kamala Harris is doing, and she is not a poster child for progressive anything, she just pretends to be, but her track record as a prosecutor proves otherwise. Just ask Steve Mnuchin, he'll tell you about it, or Willie Brown. What you will see with her is she's now bragging about the high number of women who run key parts of her campaign. And the press is bending over backwards. I read the news yesterday, lauding her for it. It's like, wow. And of course, they're making a big, huge deal about this. Now, let's think the logic through on this, okay? There is a valid issue that women are underpaid versus men when doing the same jobs. I've never understood it. I've seen it in my life. I've seen companies do it. I've also seen companies that don't do it. I think if you do a job and it pays a certain amount, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, pay them that wage, whatever. Okay, fine. Now, having said that it's wrong to play games with that issue, and I agree there is an issue there. There's an issue with women's rights as a principle, okay? Now we get into trouble where we say, well, I'm going to give you this job just because you're a woman. See, that's where you get into trouble. And that's where this so-called affirmative action is really a regressive type of thing. The moment you give somebody your vote because of their skin color, you're being a racist, even though you're claiming that you're fighting racism. And we've talked about this before, the election of Barack Obama. I've talked about my good friend Bill Marriott, how he voted for Obama. I didn't. That really bothered him. He, again, as I mentioned in a previous show, asked me if I wanted to be part of electing the first black man as president. I said, no, I want to elect whoever I think's the best guy to be president. I don't care what skin color it is, he has. It's genetics. And if I'm going to vote based on the color of his skin, that makes me racist. And, of course, Bill disagreed. Bill wasn't a racist, but he just thought that was a cool reason to vote. Whatever. I disagree. So, again, you can't fall for this trap. It suddenly can't be racism when the Democrats say, or sexism when the Democrats say, we're going to hire 80% women, but no sexism here, when all of a sudden other companies who have maybe only 20% women, they're not being sexist, but for whatever reason, they've got a small number. You have to look at each instance on its own merits or lack of. So you can see that Kamala Harris is already busy pandering. That's what she does. She panders all the time. Look at the stupid thing she did when she jumped the gun over the Jussie Smollett case, saying this was a modern day lynching. Oh, really? No, it was a hoax, a lie and a fraud. And I'm happy that the city of Chicago is suing his you-know-what to get him to at least pay back the city the $130,000 or so dollars they lost chasing this fairy tale that he made up. And then, of course, he still insists he was telling the truth, and now the cast wants him back, or else, well, I'd fire them or cancel the show. Disney Fox can afford it. They've got the money. In fact, the money they're making from the opening day of the new Avengers movie, which is going to be close to $1 billion, will more than compensate for the loss in the ratings of the show Empire, which is tanking anyway, with or without Smollett. That's my view. So getting back to Kamala Harris, I'll tell you, she's one person I don't support in this election. I think she's a phony. She's supported by a lot of the Clintonites. She went back east to Martha's Vineyard, courted a lot of their donors. Her money, the big money from her, is from elitist California liberal politicians. No, thank you. It stinks. It's more of the same. We don't need somebody who's a puppet of oligarchs. Now, let's talk about Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the reason he worries me as a candidate is because I don't think he's going to make the tough decisions that need to be done to fix America's problems. America's problems are severe. They're not light problems, but they're all self-inflicted. That's the only good news. If they're self-inflicted, then we can self-inflict the change needed to fix them. So America's education system is broken. There's a problem with student debt. There's a problem with the deficit. There's a problem with out-of-control government spending. A tax system that is broken and favors the rich and the wealthy. Thank you, Trump and the Republicans. A healthcare system that has never worked right and never will, in my opinion, as long as America continues to be America and its politicians are on the payroll of Big Pharma. And while the Democrats talk out of one end of their body, or if it's saying we support universal health care and so on, you may be pleased to know, folks, and you can Google this as well, that about a third of the Democratic senators now in power, that includes Feinstein and the seniors and senior most powerful Democrats, are all on the payroll of big insurance, big pharma, and of course, everything it takes to keep the healthcare system as screwed up as it is, and those profits turning at record levels. So the fear I have about Biden is because he represents part of the establishment. Yeah, he can do some course corrections, but I don't see him going far enough. I see more half-assed solutions, and again, this stubborn, ridiculous pattern the Democrats have. They know they have to score touchdowns to win, but instead they're determined to keep hitting and kicking field goals. It's ridiculous. It's not going to get the job done, but yet they're very good at kicking the field goals. And that's, when they don't bother to make a point to miss, like in Obamacare. It was deliberately screwed up and then passed. You can't blame the Republicans for it. Not a single Republican voted for it. So, guess who owns all of it? 100%. They do. Biden's age is an issue. His health is not the best. How will he be in 4 years? Is he a one-term president? Do we need a one-term president, or do we need a very skilled, determined guy who's younger, who can last 2 terms and use the first half of his second term to finish what he couldn't get done at the second part of the first term? Because, of course, you got to get reelected. You got to lose time there, right? So you have about 2 years of real productivity in there. Once the dust settles, once you're in office, then, of course, you got to run again, got to campaign, get settled again, continue. Then you got the lame duck session. You got about 4 years in there in chunks of 2 at a time to really get stuff done, to finish your so-called legacy. Otherwise, the next guy can come in and with an executive order, depending on what it is, stop you cold, just like Trump did with Obama on some issues. So after the break, we'll come back and discuss why that is important. And while Joe Biden is a very interesting choice, he's probably not the right one.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Christopher Fulton is a survivor of the national security state. All he wanted to do was preserve history when he acquired a Cartier watch from the estate of President Kennedy's personal secretary. But that simple act set off a terrible chain reaction. He was pursued by the U.S. Justice Department and the FBI, thrust into the middle of the U.S. government's Assassination Records Review Board, even monitored and pursued by the Russian government. All because that Cartier watch was the missing link of evidence, a timepiece worn by JFK that fateful day in Dallas, a link resulting in Christopher being incarcerated and attacked for 9 years years because he opened a hidden chapter in history. The intriguing journey outlined fully in Christopher Fulton's memoir, The Inheritance, is available now through TrineDay.com or Amazon.com. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination by Christopher and Michelle Fulton is a must-read, an incredible tale of how easily our own government can overrule justice. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. We were talking about Joe Biden running for president of the United States. According to the polling information as of today, his announcement, his video that he released making it official, he has an 8-point lead over Trump as of today. To be honest, that means nothing because it's a long time between now and the election. While it's interesting that he starts out ahead by 8 points, Bernie Sanders is going to give him a run for the money, especially early on, and it will be interesting as things move forward. Because right now, it looks like Kamala Harris is not placing in the top 3, even though she's really trying. There are rumors that Biden may choose Kamala Harris as his running mate. Not because she's the most competent vice president one could choose. God forbid we should choose somebody on that basis, right? But because it would help secure the women's vote and maybe even the black vote. So, gee, no pandering there, right? Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. Let's say that Biden does become the nominee for the Democrats. Let's say that Kamala Harris is his running mate. Unless I change my mind between now and then, it would be hard for me to vote for Biden because of Kamala Harris. That would tell me that he doesn't really care about America the way that I think he should. You have to remember, especially when you have somebody who is up there in years, and Biden is far more older than he is younger, and he has had major surgery to his brain. Remember that, folks. You have to face the fact that he may not make it through all there 4 years later, or if he does, is he going to make it another 4 years beyond that? Now, if he doesn't make it through the first term the way he should, God forbid, do you want Kamala Harris to be your president? I can't. That's a nightmare to me, okay? No, thank you. I want somebody real. Somebody who doesn't represent more chump change. Now, what about Elizabeth Warren? Well, I don't think Elizabeth Warren is as sincere as I would like her to be. I'll just put it that way. And I have to cite this one example, not because I'm a neocon or Republican or any of that other nonsense, because I'm not. But I have to go back to her Native American thing. Let's be honest. Her excuse and her release of the DNA test that she says vindicated her claim, that's pathetic. That is as bad as some of the nonsense that I hear out of Billy Meyer apologists. I'm sorry. They should talk to Elizabeth Warren. Maybe they can get a better excuse. It's just ridiculous. Now she's talking about a lot of stuff, which is interesting in concept, but I'm not sure the execution is there. But I'm glad she's at least bringing up the issues. She's already brought up the issue of universal health care. That is the main number one issue in the minds of voters today. It's going to be the number one issue for the election coming up, unless something else comes up to surprise everybody. But right now, going forward, it's about health care and doing it right. Key word there, doing it right. Big pharma, big insurance, they don't want to do it right. Now, you have Elizabeth Warren talking about education, student debt. She says she wants to wipe out all of it or most of it. You know, that raises a rather interesting issue. I have always felt as a human being, especially as a kid growing up, that education should always be free. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of education where you go learn how to do something that's so specialized that you have to go to some specialized course and, whatever. That I'm not talking about that. I just believe that education should be free up to the point where if you want to get a degree in physics or chemistry or biology, what you call a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or something like that, you should be able to do it free. I not only think that knowledge should be free, as long as you're not giving out dangerous knowledge to hurt people or the world, But I also think, and it belongs to everybody, that's the point of knowledge and humanity, the concept. But I also believe that teachers should be paid decent wages. I mean, here we're hiring these wonderful people that we entrust them to carry on knowledge and seed our children for the future, to help them grow up as kind of a parent, a role model, if you will, to help infuse them with enough knowledge, hopefully, to help them function in life so that as they graduate and grow up into the adult world, they become successful. That's the idea, at least. Doesn't always work. But I can tell you from my own experience, I'm very happy today, and people can read this on the internet. It's not secret. It's not locked or hidden away in some secret account. On my own Facebook page, Kal Korff, you'll see there's dialogue between teachers that were like role models and second fathers to me growing up. They remember when I got yanked out of high school at JFK High School by the House Select Committee on Assassinations over my work on JFK's murder. We've talked about that on the show, how it got me involved in the studying that case for 16 years and eventually solving the assassination. They remember my lecturing with Stanton Friedman, how I was inviting Friedman to lecture with me in high school, and we did. They remember the Roswell stuff, all that, Billy Meyer, etc., because they remember me as their student. You know, I kind of stuck out a little bit. So I'm grateful I had these teachers who took me under their wing and at times deliberately would always make a point to disagree with me, but they didn't tell me that at the time because it pushed me to try to prove them wrong. And I would turn in things like 200-page reports to say, there you go, you know. So that was just the way I was. So I'm grateful that that happened. And I remember hearing stories, even as a kid, that they didn't have a lot of money. I remember hearing what they were making, and it was less money than my dad was making as a simple grocery clerk, literally working at a store called Co-op at the time in Berkeley in the 60s and 70s. So I remember these things, and it's heartbreaking to see how little that teachers get paid today. Now, I hear a lot of complaints about teachers that, you know, they're lousy today compared to the old way. I think if you blame it on the teachers, you're wrong. In fact, you didn't learn a damn thing. It's not that simple. I know a lot of good teachers, and so does everyone else. In fact, if you can make sense of this broadcast, you can read and write and pretty much function in your life. You had a better teacher than you may give that teacher credit for. Our government and our politicians have failed our educational system, which means we are failing our people, our children, our future. It can't survive. I remember growing up in the Bay Area, California was tops in education. Now it's near the bottom, where a lot of the southern states rank above it, and there's no excuse for that. This is the breadbasket of Silicon Valley and agriculture, one of the strongest economies in the world, right? Well, it also has one of the largest percentage of homeless people and poverty in the United States, yet also the largest concentration of wealth. It is literally a state that is becoming increasingly the haves and the have-nots. And that is a mirror on the political issue today. When people cannot afford health care, they can't afford to go to school. They can't afford to have a job that pays them a decent wage because it isn't out there, or people are working two jobs. We must remember that one trick the Obama administration played when they used to hype the job numbers. Look how much job growth we've got. This economy is recovering. What they didn't really tell you was whether a job was full-time or part-time. So yeah, the number of jobs went up, but the quality of those jobs, the amount of money they paid per hour or month, as well as whether they were full-time or part-time, was not anywhere near ideal, nor the mix of what it used to be. And that's just the way things have gone. In fact, the way things are today, it is so disproportionate that literally 1% of the richest people on this planet own now what is heading towards 52% of the global wealth. There is no known point in history that the wealth gap has been that disproportionate. Now, I understand that there's not a lot of hard science when you go back to the time of the pharaohs, the Aztecs, whatever. But even back then, think about it today, where you've got trillions and even more wealth than back in the past. God knows literally how much wealth. You've got almost, you've got 1% controlling almost 52%, and it's getting worse. The middle class is contracting, even in Europe, even in the West, in the U.S. And that is not a recipe for success. It is guaranteed disaster. It's just a question of when and over what issues. So whoever becomes president of the United States, whatever political parties are in power, they've got to address these issues because the time bomb is ticking, and it literally is a time bomb. It is not a metaphor. It is pretty much a fact. If this continues at its pace in the near future, within a term of the next president, and it's already starting and ticking down, this stuff will start to implode. They just announced a couple days ago that Social Security needs fixing. They've got to put tens of trillions of dollars into it, or people my age, when I take it, will lose 30 to 40% of it, even though it's our money. Again, that's not the way to run things. So the problem for the Democratic Party is how to find a candidate that unites all of that. One of their candidates is a mayor who's gay, who's married to a man. Are Americans ready for a first dude or a first man as the so-called wife or partner of the president? Who knows? Do you judge somebody based on their sexual preference? That's not how you should rate a politician. Is the issue the sexual preference, or is the issue who's qualified to lead the nation? That should be the issue. So this race is very interesting. You have Beto O'Rourke. Nobody knows why he's even in there. He just says, I'm just destined to do it. Well, gee, that's a reason to run, I guess. Anyway, it's all over the map. And this is going to be both entertaining, bemusing, and amusing. But welcome to the Democrats. And some of these are dumbocrats, let's be honest. They'll do dumb things. But this is going to be very interesting because if they don't do it right, when they have so many elements going for them, they're going to be dumb enough just to hand Trump a re-election. And then they have nobody but to blame should that happen but themselves. And that's the same reason they lost the last time. It's their fault, no one else's. We'll be back next week for another episode. Thanks for joining me.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.